I think I found something interesting for speculating where NIO is currently standing in terms of production and possibly deliveries regarding October, but also in general on an annualized run rate. So let's dive into that. First, the stuff that I found comes from a company called XPT, and you guys who are into NIO know that XPT is a 100% wholly owned company by NIO, which does the EV skateboards and the electric drive units, or the motors. They're also involved in the batteries. I think they're not possibly manufacturing the batteries or putting them together, but they are doing some sort of the battery management system. And so this is also around the topic that NIO is fantastically vertically integrated where it matters. There is some FUD and rumors out there that NIO is not so integrated vertically and thereby lacking on the margins and the R&D and technology. And I would say that isn't really the case, although they use for manufacturing a partner, JAC NIO, but still they own their technology and they do development in their own technology. And I'm actually having another video coming up for you guys soon regarding something that they announced around the ET7 and what's to come in terms of new efficiencies to this model. But now let's start to what else I've found. So in the presentation which they had this graph which basically shows the electric drive units, the motors which they have produced so far from XPT. And you can see that this is also in the official NIO coloring and layout which were used with the font and so on. So it's looking quite authentic here. And what you can see here is on an annualized level, like how many motors they have been producing, and for 2021 until the 12th of October. And then the line that you can see here is the cumulative number of all of the motors that they have ever produced. So far, all of these motors that XPT is producing are going into NIO cars. For each NIO car, there's currently 2 motors. And in the future, this company will possibly also supply those motors to external companies, maybe even Western manufacturers, because that's actually what is in their business license and also the case on how this company got founded, by the way, by Jack Chung, one of the NIO co-founders, which I met at CES in Shanghai previously. And so this company has bigger plans in the end and will actually also sell their technology or produce and manufacture those motors for others. And this will become also a revenue stream for NIO. And I would say that this potential is possibly not even well regarded for NIO so far. But anyways, let's talk about these numbers. What I've done here is just made a quick Excel sheet in my NIO business case here. And going from 2018 till today, and basically lining up those numbers that I get here from the chart around the motors that I have produced, so 25K in 2018 up to 140K in until October the 12th. And what I've done here is that I've matched those motors produced with the NIO sales. So in 2018, NIO sold only 11,000 cars and they produced 25,000 motors. And that essentially means that they could have actually fitted or produced 12,932 motors because they had some inventory of motors left that were not going into cars in 2018. And so this happens, of course, this is a process for producing. Of course, you have like cars in the factory that are not sold or delivered yet. You need some inventory, even though that NIO is working on this order to manufacture process. Still, of course, not in the same day that you produce the motor, you will also produce the car. And so you will have those kind of inventory building up from time over time. In 2019, this inventory was a bit smaller, so they produced 41,000 motors and sold 20,000 vehicles. And last year they produced 91,000 motors and sold 43,000 cars. Now, what should be interesting for us now is the 2021 numbers, particularly because we know that NIO so far sold 66,395 cars and delivered them. At least these are the official numbers from the reporting of NIO. But from this chart now, this is the news. We know that 140,000 motors actually have been produced until October the 12th, and that would theoretically fit 70,000 cars, and well, 70,283 cars to be exact. And of course we know that so many cars haven't been sold or delivered yet. So now we can start and speculate what this possibly means for the October deliveries. And of course, NIO was going into this year with some inventory once again. But if you've seen the pictures in my last videos, that from the latest delivery push, we saw that NIO even sold out the show cars from the NIO houses and NIO spaces. That seems like really they are running pretty much with everything they can produce and get out there. And so it may actually be likely that also the motor inventory is a little bit lower by now, but that's something, well, which we cannot know for now. But anyways, there is, of course, now this discrepancy here between the 70,283 cars that could be fitted with the motors produced until October the 12th and the sales so far, which are exactly the 3,888. And this number, you could now assume, is the number of cars produced until October 12th. So from just in October, NIO may have produced 3,888 cars based on these numbers around the manufacturing of the engines. And because this number is only the number that is now kind of the gap for the 12 days in October, we could also assume that if this run rate continues, then they should be able to produce 6,156 cars actually. So this would be based on the assumption that none of the current inventory has been used in order to manufacture new cars, or that they keep the inventory at the same level. And that would bring NIO essentially to a production number of around 10,000 vehicles for the month of October right now. And possibly if they manage to also deliver and sell all of them in the same time, well, it could hint another 10K in deliveries. Although, of course, we cannot say that for sure based on these numbers, because we don't know the time lags in between, and the inventory are just guesstimates here. But I think we can say roundabout this is what is possible. And also, if they even have inventory, the 4K that I've mentioned here before, and they could even sell out that one additionally, this could even bring them to almost 14K of deliveries within October. Now that seems a bit too high, because it's quite uncertain that they would actually go and bring everything to zero. There are always some cars within production and the manufacturing process. But just trying to get a feeling here, this seems like that the current run rate is between those 10K and 14K monthly. And I think, annualized, this would bring it pretty close right now to 150K annual capacity. And that doesn't mean that this year we would see that, but I think this is really where NIO is right now. And I think this year it's more likely to land between 95,000 vehicles and maybe 100,000 vehicles being delivered. And but for next year, this already tells us that right now it seems we are on this track for next year for having at least a 150K. But of course, this will just continue ramping with the new factory that I've shown, and also with the extension of the lines that NIO has been working on even in this month as well, and the double shift. And so it's more likely that this rate will actually even improve. But this gives us kind of a good feeling of where NIO is currently. Of course, these numbers are just based on those XPT manufacturing numbers for the motors and drivetrains. And so we don't know really if there are additional chip shortages or other parts missing. So there could still, of course, be other factors at play when it comes ultimately to the deliveries. But the heart of the car is actually seemingly at this run rate, which I would say would be really in line with what I have projected in the business case and so on. And as mentioned yesterday, for an exciting 2022 coming up. So anyways, just wanted to share this before doing another video on the specifics of how NIO is actually improving the efficiencies of the ET7 and what kind of technical innovations they have. And so I hope you like that. Please smash a like if you do so, and then see you in the next one.